Hello all, Stacy the Black Feather Intuitive. Welcome to Pop Culture Readings. Around here, we're all about curiosity, clarity, and courage, understanding ourselves, each other, and the beautifully messy mystery of being human. Come with your questions, leave with understanding, maybe a little lighter than before. And today's episode is a little bit sad. Actually, it's a lot sad, and it's going to be a little more serious than most of our pop culture readings. Today, we're talking about Hayden Panettiere. So Hayden spent years being remarkably open about some incredibly difficult parts of her life. So brave. So rather than speculate about her death, today I want to ask a much more important question. What was her story trying to teach us while she was here? If you like this type of content and our tea and our lessons meets intuitive insight style today, like, subscribe, and comment with questions for stories you'd like us to explore too. Would love to tune in for you in this way. So this one is really intense for me, as it is, I'm sure, for a lot of people, because it's a woman, a mother dealing with postpartum depression, dealing with addiction issues, and also let's throw in the trifecta of having an abusive partnership. It's devastating, and too many women get swept up in these kinds of situations, and it's really tragic. So Hayden Panettiere died on August 16th at just 36 years old. Her official cause of death has not yet been released, and authorities have said there were no signs of foul play. She had lived much of her life publicly, working professionally from childhood, and eventually became known for her roles in Heroes, Nashville, Remember the Titans, and Scream. But Hayden also spent years talking remarkably openly about what was happening behind the celebrity image. After the birth of her daughter, Kaya, Hayden experienced serious postpartum depression and sought treatment. She later discussed how postpartum struggles, anxiety, and addiction became intertwined in her life. She also experienced domestic abuse during her relationship with Brian Hickerson. Hickerson later pled no contest to felony domestic violence charges and served jail time. Hayden subsequently resumed a relationship with him, something that illustrates one of the realities we often misunderstand about abusive relationships. Leaving isn't always one clean event. And often it takes a woman 8 times, 8 leavings or leaving attempts before it sticks. Let that sink in. Earlier this year, Hayden released her memoir, This Is Me, A Reckoning, in which she discussed childhood fame, addiction, motherhood, relationships, trauma, and recovery. And since her death just a few, short days ago, another painful piece of her history has resurfaced. Hayden previously said that after she publicly disclosed her postpartum depression, longtime sponsor Neutrogena ended its relationship with her. The company has now acknowledged that Hayden felt unsupportive and said the way the situation was handled did not reflect its values. That gives us a much more important story than speculation about how Hayden died. She spent years saying, "This is what I'm struggling with. Can somebody please help me?" So perhaps the question now isn't what happened to Hayden. It's, were we listening to what she was trying to teach us while she was here? And so instead of the tea today, we are going to focus on the lesson, Hayden's lesson to us. What was Hayden's story trying to teach us about suffering that we can't always see? So I am going to pull a card here, but I want to just share a little bit of my story as well. I came from a really abusive background, an alcoholic home. And that led me to connecting with a lot of alcoholic partnerships, abusive partnerships. And one that I was in for, it actually wasn't very long, but it was 13 months that we were together. And each month felt like a year. It literally took 13 years off of my life. And it took me about 6 years after it broke up for me to stop constantly thinking about it, obsessing about it, wishing that things were different, trying to get back together, doing the back and forth. And I feel like a lot of times we get involved in these types of dynamics because we are attracted to other people's wounds and we are trying to heal ourselves, but we're healing ourselves in a different way. We're trying to heal ourselves because we're trying to heal somebody else. And if I can heal someone else and fix someone else, then, I'm worthwhile. Then there's something right with me. Then this all sort of makes sense. And really what we're doing is we're avoiding looking at our own wounds. And I feel like with Hayden's story, she had a triple whammy. She had addiction issues. She had postpartum depression, which, addiction issues is a chemical imbalance in the body, as well as I like to say it's kind of stinking thinking, a disease of the thinking. You don't think in a normal way. You think in kind of a bit of a twisted way, and it takes you a while to figure out that that's a little bit backwards. She had postpartum depression, so there was a chemical and a hormonal imbalance with that. And, if anyone has suffered from depression of any kind, you know that it's not easy to get out of bed. People say, oh, just do this and just do that. If I could, I would. Stop saying just do this and just do that. Unless you've experienced it, you don't know the struggle that it takes. And then with all of that stuff going on, and we also know that she has history with her mother. She was a child Hollywood star, and that doesn't always work out very well. There's a lot of history with child stars. Drew Barrymore is one of them, that shows that they get involved in addiction early on, that it's a tough workload, that they work long hours and they don't really have a childhood. And she had kind of a stage mom, and it appears that mom, cares more about herself than she cared about her daughter. And so that affected her and set her up to, I want to say, be susceptible to an abusive partnership. And then getting into that abusive partnership, it's very easy to hear those words from a partner that you're worthless, you're an idiot, you're stupid, you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're not pretty enough, you don't work hard enough for me, you're hurting me, you're doing all these things to me, it's all about me. And after a while, if you don't have a solid foundation, you can crack. You can, crack under the weight of that pressure. And so when we talk about her suffering, a lot of this she didn't even know was abnormal. I always say this, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. You can't fix something if you don't understand that it's broken. And that was my story. I didn't know what a healthy relationship was. I didn't know, what my life could be like without feeling some level of depression or a chemical imbalance, because it was all I knew. And I just thought that was life. And that was what everybody went through. So what can she teach us about suffering? I want to say she can teach us that it's so important for us to not automatically assume that another person's situation and experience about life is the same as ours. And when you see somebody and you sense that somebody is suffering, when somebody reaches out and says, I'm struggling, I need some help, listen to them. Don't judge it. Don't compare it to what you've gone through and say, well, she'll get over it, or, that seems kind of silly that she's getting worked up over this tiny little thing. She might be sharing that tiny little thing with you because that's the only thing that she has been able to muster up the courage to speak about. And, it's the iceberg. She gives you the tip of the iceberg, but there's so much more going on under the surface. So what is she teaching us about the suffering that we can't always see? The Hermit card, that often, everyone, all of our lives, we're not alone and we're not isolated in life. We're on a planet with, billions of people. And I would dare to say that the life journey is really, quite frankly, all about connection and getting to know one another and learning about ourselves through the interactions with the other. But at the end of the day, each person's life is their own. I can tell you what my experience is. I can tell you how things affect me and how I feel about life and situations and circumstances. I can share that information with you, but if it's not your life and your experience, you're not going to fully understand it. And that's why empathy is so important. The Hermit's journey says, you can hold my hand while I'm taking this journey, but you can't go with me really on the journey. You can support me, but you can't go on the journey with me because it is about myself. It's about getting to know myself deeply, understanding what makes me tick, understanding who I am as an emotional person, understanding what my purpose is. as a child star, she was told what her purpose was, and she never really got the opportunity to really kind of grow into herself. She was in the process of that when she died. And it is tragic to die at 36 years of age. You're just getting your life started. She's leaving behind a daughter. She's leaving behind, family and friends who really love and care about her. And maybe they didn't ask the right questions. Maybe they assumed a lot of things and didn't really listen and say, how can I help you? How can I support you? Let's dive into the truth beneath it. What do we still misunderstand about postpartum depression, addiction, and why leaving abuse can be so complicated? Well, I talked a little bit about that today, guys, but I feel like what we need to understand is that our bodies are a direct reflection of the things that are going on in our lives that we have not addressed yet. Our bodies are the last line of defense. If we have an emotional wound, if we have something inside of us that needs to be healed, anytime there is an event, a catalyst experience like giving birth, which is pretty traumatic in itself. It's traumatic for the baby, but it's really traumatic for the mother. There's so much pain. There's a lot of contraction and expansion. There's, having to rush to the hospital. There's beeping sounds and lights all over the place. And I mean, it's the body, doesn't always go back to the way that it was. It is a transformation from an old version of you to a new version of you. And of course your hormones are going to go crazy. You were just, incubating another human being who also has their own hormonal needs and all the rest of it. You're growing life inside of you. I think sometimes the depression period, but postpartum depression is misunderstood in a big way because, half of the population doesn't give birth in this way. So therefore doesn't understand the shifts and the changes in hormonal tendencies. And I'm not saying that men can't understand. I'm saying that men don't have the same experience in what they're going through. So it's important to, if you have male friends, if you have a father that you're speaking to, if your partner is male, that male person understand, I can empathize with you. I can't sympathize because I've not experienced it, but I can empathize. And I don't need to fix the problem. I need to be there to say, how can I support you? How can I help you? To listen. Addiction is another one of those things where we all have our vices. Every single one of us, we can get addicted to anything. So make no mistake, we all can dive into that path, especially when we are trying to cope. And Hayden's story, she did not have a lot of people around her. I want to say that she felt comfortable enough to share all the deep dive secrets. She was just starting to do that and starting to bring that up. And yes, she was addicted to medications, and I believe she might have had an addiction to alcohol. But let's talk about the fact that she was also addicted to her abusive partner. And that is why leaving abuse can be so complicated, because we can get addicted to our partners and to that cycle of abuse. It's not that anyone wants to continue to be abused. It's that you're addicted to that cycle, because a lot of times there's a lot of love bombing in there. And if you don't have a sense of your own value, your own worth in that type of situation, you're going to seek that out from someone else. And if you're coming from a wounded place and you're also with a person who's wounded, and that subconscious part of you is trying to heal that wound and fix that wound so that then you can finally be, proven that you are worthy, that you have worth, and that you matter, it just gets completely enmeshed. And it's so hard to be pulled out of that. All of the manipulation to the side, because there's manipulation that goes on in abusive relationship as well that kind of, messes with your head. But this is what we misunderstand, that a lot of times these abusive relationships, you become the addict to the partner. And it's not because you want the abuse. It's because you want that partner to acknowledge you. And that goes really deep. And here's what the cards have to say. Yeah, the tower. It's a tower moment. It's the catalyst. When the tower comes up, in a reading, it is like that fatal lightning strike that you could never predict. And everything that you thought was true around you comes tumbling down. And at first you look at it and you go, oh my God, this is horrible. This is awful. I don't know how I'm going to be able to get past this. How am I going to get to the other side of this? But eventually when you do get to the other side of it, often you see things that you couldn't see when you were in the situation. And you recognize this wasn't actually healthy for me in the first place. This actually, I'm glad that this thing happened because it helped me to see so much more clearly about who I can become and what actually was really going on. The tower is a big traumatic experience. And I feel like postpartum depression comes out of a traumatic experience. Your body goes through a big traumatic experience, giving birth to a child. And hormonally, it goes through a traumatic change, a shift. Addiction is usually caused by a traumatic experience or perpetuated by traumatic experiences. And abusive relationships, the whole thing is traumatic. So we need to understand our trauma. We need to understand what trauma is so that we can stop ourselves from getting involved in it, or so that we can support another person that we love who is going through a traumatic experience, that we can identify it and we can slowly, calmly, with love, assure them that there's a better way and that you'll hold their hand through the process. I'm here whenever you're ready. I'm here to help you out and to not judge them if it takes them 8 times, 9 times, 10 times, 12 times before they actually leave the dynamic. And I feel like this is, in many ways, the legacy that Hayden is leaving the world, is let's really look at how we judge others for the experiences that they're going through. The body keeps the score, and the body is our last line of defense. When the body is showing something in a physical way, depression, mental illness, addiction, whatever the case may be, abuse, taking abuse, showing abuse, the body is saying there's something that needs to be healed within you. You've got to look at the emotional component in order for you to be able to rise out of the physical. And when we don't do that, we run into these situations where we give up our life. And I'm not saying she wanted to give up her life. I don't feel that this was a suicidal situation. I don't even know that this was, an unfortunate unaliving. I feel that this was actually accidental, but these are the things that can happen when you're not dealing with the core issues and that you're not getting support. So let's look at a little mirror work here. Who in your life might need compassion more than advice right now? And what can Hayden's story teach the rest of us about seeing each other better? This is a big one. Wow. We've got 4 of swords, 4 of snakes actually in this card deck, but it's 4 of swords. This is an individual who's exhausted, an individual who lives in their head most of the time. And the invitation of the 4 of swords card is to get out of your head and to get into your heart more, to give yourself permission for self-care, to not be pushing yourself all the time, to not be constantly holding yourself to the highest of expectations, or to have people around you and to keep people around you that hold you to unrealistic expectations. So when you're thinking about this today, who in your life might need compassion more than advice right now? Look at those individuals in your life who are always pushing the envelope, who are never giving themselves the opportunity to rest. These are the people who never take a day off. These are the people that drop whatever it is that they've got going on with themselves to run out and help another person at the expense of their own needs. This is something that I feel we can really pay attention to right now, looking at one another, talking to one another. And it's not just saying, oh, hey, how you doing? It's so great to see you. And everyone says, oh, I'm fine. How are you? That might be total bullshit. Ask deeper questions. How are you doing really? What's been going on? How are things going with your daughter? How are things going with that new project? I know you were a little nervous about starting it. Has it been going well for you? Are you feeling like it's giving you the growth that you want? How's that new job been for you? I know you were really nervous about starting that. We need to stop and give people presence. We need to be in the now moment. It doesn't mean we have to stop and talk to someone, every single person that we meet, for an hour and a half and have a deep, life-changing conversation. But when we are connecting with the people in our lives that matter the most to us, this is what we want to be doing more of. It's not keeping it surface. It's not being afraid to ask the deeper questions and to be present with that person. Put the phone down. Listen to what they have to say. Give them the gift of your time. 5 minutes of quality time that doesn't get interrupted by the phone or the doorbell or, just a minute, I have a thought in my head that I have to, get out on paper. Or sitting there and thinking about what you're going to say rather than actually holding space and listening to what the person has to say. We need to be better about listening. We need to be better about being present. The gift of presence, I want to say, is worth its weight in gold. It's better than just about any other gift that we can give. And, today we're so focused on technology and we're so focused on, getting to the next rung on the ladder that we can often bulldoze right through what really matters. And what really matters is that Hayden could have very likely used somebody that saw into what she was going through and spoke to her about it in a deep, meaningful way, saying the things that might be uncomfortable, but also creating the safe space for her to be able to explore what that truth really meant for her. This was a tough one, guys. I don't normally do tough for pop culture, but this one, when it happened, I felt so strongly that I needed to talk about this. So, I feel like the best way that we can honor Hayden in particular and any other individuals that go through this kind of trauma in their life is to learn from them, to not let their experience go to waste. I say wisdom is a nothing burger unless it's applied. And we can absolutely learn from someone else's wisdom earned. Her wisdom was earned hard, and she didn't get to apply it fully. So let's apply it fully on her behalf. Remember, curiosity gets us in the door, clarity helps us understand what we're seeing, and courage is what we do with what we've learned. Until I see you for another episode of Pop Culture Readings, sending lots of love and support. We'll see you on the flip side, and transform well.